Hey Christian Metalhead friends, Pastor Brad here, man. Today we're taking a trip together back to 1994. This was a massive year for Christian metal. The genre was continuing to stretch and grow. This was a season when classic, heavy metal, and thrash was starting to bump into the influence of alternative and groove metal and other metal influences that were coming up. Christian metal labels like Intense Records and REX were growing in strength and prominence, providing Christian metal artists with even more robust platforms for producing and distributing and promoting their music. The message of hope and redemption was as bold as ever, wrapped in killer riffs and powerful vocals. In this video, with the wonderful help of Andy over at Angelic Warlord, I am so excited to share with you 16 amazing releases from 1994 and 8 honorable mentions. Rocking you up for Jesus Christ with classic style hard rock music and practical Bible teaching. Just before we dive into this amazing collection of albums released in 1994, I want to say, if I overlook one that you believe needs to be part of this list, by all means, dive down in the comments and share it with us, okay? Let's make this as complete as possible. Help me out. Album release number 1, Barren Cross. Rattle Your Cage. Known for their bold evangelistic lyrics and heavy melodic sound, Barren Cross has been a staple of Christian metal since the 1980s. In 1994, they released Rattle Your Cage, yet another Barren Cross album loaded with conviction and headbanging awesomeness. Release number 2, David Benson, Holy Psychotherapy. David Benson brought a doomy Black Sabbath-inspired vibe to Christian metal, with deep introspective lyrics about faith and spiritual warfare. His 1994 release, Holy Psychotherapy, continued to expand his heavy, dramatic approach to Christian metal. Album releases number 3 and 4, Bride's Scarecrow Messiah and Lost Reels. Bride, fronted by the passionate vocals of Dale Thompson. Is known for blending metal with elements of blues and hard rock. In 1994, they gave fans a double treat with Scarecrow Messiah, a hard-hitting collection of brand new Bride songs, and Lost Reels, a collection of previously unreleased songs. It's always fun when you're a fan of a band and they say, hey man, we're going to go back to the archives and we're going to pull stuff up from yesteryear, do a little work on it, produce it, and share it with you. Next, we've got another double release. Album releases number 5 and 6 are courtesy of Deliverance, River Disturbance, and Decade of Deliverance, known for their early thrash metal sound. And really, from the folks that I know who love Deliverance, that's what they're known for and loved for. But they did grow as musicians, their sound evolved, and with River Disturbance, they really kind of stretched out. I listened through most of the album today, and I gotta be honest, the vibe, here's what it reminded me of. Promise Man by Holy Soldier. Now, if you remember, Holy Soldier kind of did a similar thing. They had their self-titled debut album, and then they had Last Train, and then I don't know if they came out with anything in between that and Promise Man or not, but then they came out with Promise Man, and when I first heard Promise Man, I didn't really like it because for me, it was a shift. It was a different direction, and I was expecting classic kind of 80s style metal, and I got Promise Man, kind of a modern, almost sort of grungy sort of sound. Deliverance sort of went that direction with River Disturbance, and this is going to crack you up, man. There's a couple places on this album that I personally think Jimmy P. Brown, the lead vocalist for Deliverance, sounds a little bit like David Bowie. Now I'm drowning in the river disturbance. If you say run, I'll run with you. If you own this album, if you love this album, go off in the comments and tell me how much you love this and why it's so great, okay? And I'm sure it really was a good album. But again, we kind of tend to get locked into knowing a band or expecting certain things from a band, and when they go a little slightly different direction, it's kind of like, whoa, I might have liked that if I'd didn't think it was this band, right? Or whatever. Anyway, it's a good album. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't listened to it. It is not what I had come to expect from Deliverance. So take a listen to it, man. And then the other album is an album that celebrates a decade of Deliverance, 10 years of metal ministry. Release number 7. Idol Cure. Eclipse. Now with Idol Cure, you get just the opposite of what I just described with Deliverance. Okay, with Idol Cure, it is bing, bing, bing. They're consistent, man. Every album they released, it was like, that's Idol Cure. Which is a great thing when you love a band for a certain thing, to get more of it. Idol Cure is celebrated and loved for their melodic, AOR, big kind of arena rock sound. It's hard to hear you through. Every other day it's something new. And this album just delivers a heap and helping of exactly that vibe.
How many years did you sing before you were in Idol Cure?
I started singing with my first band in high school in 1969. And we started, and like I say, through the college years, we kind of fell apart, but I would keep singing.
Influences were?
Influences in those days were like you, the Beatles, certainly the English Invasion bands. Mm-hmm. Some of the early American bands were probably, I started, in college, I started playing, I had always played guitar. In fact, I'd played guitar before I sang. But in college, I got an acoustic guitar because you couldn't travel much with an amp back and forth to the dorm. So I started getting into things more like the Eagles and the acoustic stuff, Dan Fogelberg, and getting together with, say, trios where we'd sing 3-part harmonies, even Crosby, Stills, and Nash, that kind of stuff. Now, coming out, I was in a secular band. The Lord was getting on my conscience about singing some of these secular songs. And I wanted another outlet. And I had always wanted to do original material. So I started looking for some sort of outlet. Actually had met Chuck King, but our musical tastes were always a little bit different from one another's. And then I met Mark Ambrose kind of by accident in the living room of his mom's house. He was sitting down at the piano. We did, I think we did Joe Cocker, and just a little bit of test of songs. And more important, hit it off immediately.
Yeah.
Just hit it off immediately.
That chemistry just was
the chemistry,
there
and it's got to be there.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, you can try to make it work with other people. Sometimes it can work just on the music alone, And, we've known so many bands that, oh, man, they're great on stage, but they hate each other's guts the moment they get off stage. So we got along great together. There again, sat down for maybe 3 songs at the piano and then spent a couple hours just having a great time talking. Mark was playing in, you probably have to call it a fusion kind of band, right? No lead singer, so they were just getting together musically and playing. Started singing with them. Nobody had written any lyrics yet, had to write some lyrics, and then that's just kind of how it developed, right? And in the early days, Chuck was kind of in and out of different bands. There's you probably never heard of a band called Eden, but Eden recorded a song on Maranatha called Break Out of the Night that did very well, and
Actually,
I sang the lead vocals on that.
I think I have heard of those guys.
So that was the first time I was in the studio singing Break Out of the Night for Eden, which Chuck King and Roger were in, and their lead singer just wasn't cutting it. So they called me in the middle of the night, dude, we're in the studio, we got to finish this song, can you come help us out? So I went in and sang that song, and so later on it just develops. Mark and I are playing in Sojourn, and then the last song Mark wrote for Sojourn was Come Alive. We had met Bill Baumgart, and Bill Baumgart said, look, you guys, I'll make you a deal. I'll cut you guys a demo in my home studio free of charge, but the deal is if you get a record deal, I get to be the producer. And that's exactly what we did. Jim Kempner heard Come Alive and a couple other songs, signed us, and that's basically how things started.
If you're looking for uplifting arena rock, big choruses, lots of heart, dude, you can't go wrong with Idol Cure ever. And Eclipse is definitely right in that category. Here we go again. Next, we have yet another double release, man. 94 was a big year for bands releasing 2 albums in 1 year. Impellitteri released Answer to the Master and Victim of the System. Now, let me say a word or two about Impellitteri. It's one of those bands that sometimes people will say, well, they're not a Christian band. And actually, Chris Impellitteri himself will say they're not a Christian band. Stryper kind of says that about themselves sometimes too. They say, we're Christians, in a band. All right, whatever. For me, it's about, are you creating music with a message that honors Jesus Christ and that will get my head banging and encourage my heart? If it does, I put that in the category of Christian metal, Christian rock, whatever, okay? Chris Impellitteri professes faith in Jesus, and Rob Rock is bold and right out front with his faith in all of his lyrics. And so with both of these albums, what you get is just monster shred guitar, super aggressive, straightforward, Christian, hard, power metal. With one of the best voices in metal, Rob Rock, right out front, lifting up Jesus and encouraging you in your faith. Release number 10, man, we are getting as classic as it gets here. Jerusalem Prophet. Swedish rockers Jerusalem have been a pioneering force in Christian hard rock since the 1970s. They are right in there with Petra and Resurrection Band and all of those early pioneers, man. Blending hard rock with a bold Christian message. Their 1994 release, Prophet, continued Jerusalem's tradition of delivering hard-hitting, Christ-honoring, high-energy rock for the King. Release number 11, and to my knowledge, this is the only supergroup on the list, King James. King James is a powerful Christian metal quartet formed in 1993 with Rex Carroll on lead guitar, Jimmy Bennett on lead vocals, then they later recruited Timothy Gaines and Robert Sweet to create an incredible rhythm section. Their self-titled debut album was released in 1994. I love this album, man. It rocks. It drips with, as you can imagine, incredible talent, great songwriting, chops, skill, production, everything. Release number 12, Kerry Livgren, When Things Get Electric. Kerry, one of the original members of the band Kansas, walked away from Kansas December 31st, 1983, led by the Lord to pursue a much more just openly Christian path, expressing his love for and faith in Jesus.
Kerry, just as there are passages in the Pinnacle which usher in imagery, to me, of Yeshua the Messiah, defeating death and having risen from the dead. Likewise, Kerry, the song A Glimpse of Home from Monolith, and it conveys similar imagery of arriving home within the kingdom. Yet I realize, Kerry, that both of these songs, of course, were written BC. Friends, I'm relaying this for a reason, and Kerry, you discussed this in your book, Seeds of Change. Kerry, if you don't mind, can you give us the basics of Urantia and of how, through your friend Jeff Pollard of LaRue, the true and living God revealed himself to you?
Yeah, well, that's a long, complicated story. I'll try to condense it. What is Urantia? Urantia was the pinnacle, if you will, of my religious search to find truth. I had gone through every major religion. I was beginning to major in the minors at this point, kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel. And I walked into a bookstore one day and I saw this big blue volume called Urantia. I thought, what in the world is this? And I pulled it down and started reading, and it grabbed me right away. The Urantia book is divided basically into two sections. One's the history and origin of the planet Earth. The second section is the life and teachings of Jesus. Well, I thought, well, that's really interesting. Jesus, I haven't done anything with him since I was a little kid. You know, I've gone through all the religions, but not Jesus. But I got to tell you, this was a different Jesus, a different gospel than the Christian gospel is. Now, I was not aware of that at the time. It hooked me bad. I mean, it was a fascinating book, absolutely fascinating. I stayed up all night reading it several times. It was just, so I became, quote, a Urantian. And when I met Jeff Pollard, we were on the middle of a tour. Jeff had long blonde hair. I did at the time. He was their lead guitar player. I was their lead guitar player, Kansas lead guitar player. So we had a lot in common. And then I found out he was interested in spiritual things. And I thought, all right, I'm going to make a second Urantian. there'll be two of us, this will be cool. So we began to have these, I call them spiritual debates. I found out Jeff was a conventional Christian, and we would sit in the back of his bus. I gave up my seat on our jet to ride on their bus, and we'd sit there and go back and forth. I'd sit there with my Urantia book open, and I'd read a passage to him, and then he'd respond with something from the Bible. But what I noticed was this extremely peculiar phenomenon. Every time he read to me out of the Bible, it was as if a dagger was sticking me in the heart. It was touching me in a way and in a place that the Urantia book simply didn't. And that was disturbing to me, because I thought, I can't become a Christian. I thought, to me, a Christian was the only thing I'd seen was preachers on TV, which I would sit around with Kansas and laugh at them. It was not something I took seriously. Then we split up, and Jeff Pollard went one direction, we went the other on the tour. And he gave me a little book by Hal Lindsey called The Liberation of Planet Earth. And I didn't look at that book for several weeks, just because I was so stirred up inside. I didn't know what to think at that point. I started to read it one night in Indianapolis, Indiana. And Hal Lindsey said, I don't even remember what the key phrase, what he said, but it put me over the edge. I got down on my knees, and I said, God, if you're the God of the Bible, then I want to know you, and I'll forsake all these others if you can prove to me that you're the God that I have been looking for all these years. And bang, something happened. I got up off my knees, and I was a different person.
Kerry gave us a lot of Christ-honoring great rock music after he left Kansas in 1983. And one of his offerings was this 1994 album, When Things Get Electric. This album, like everything that Kerry put out, showcases his legendary musicianship and songwriting. Release number 13, Nuvo, Beginnings. Nuvo was known for their melodic, kind of hard rock sound. Some people have kind of compared them to a Christian version of Def Leppard. Lightning strikes in the distant sky. They definitely brought a fresh, kind of modern hard rock vibe to the Christian music of the 1990s. And a message that absolutely reflected their love for the Lord and their desire to share Him with others. I actually saw Nuvo live at a little bitty club in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1994. They were on tour with a band called Imagine This, and both of them were supporting Michael Sweet. I went to that little club. Kel dropped me off. I was all by myself. I know I've shared this, I think this story in another video, but Michael Sweet actually had a sore throat that night, and I never got to see him, and I had never seen him before, so I was really bummed, but I stuck around, and Nuvo and Imagine This were both just really, really good, and I went out and bought this album, and I loved it, man. If you haven't listened to Nuvo, I definitely encourage you to check them out, man. They're really good. Release number 14, a band that I know at least some of you know about because you have talked about them in the comments before, Red Sea. The album's name was Blood. Red Sea had a short-lived but powerful stint within Christian hard rock and metal. Their 1994 release was absolutely no exception, showcasing the best of what they were known for, man. Powerful, God-honoring, faith-inspiring vocals. There's a revolution dawning. And hard rock, blues-influenced riffs, man, were just infectiously heavy. Release number 15, The Brave. Down by the river, you can hear the people pray. Trust. With a sound reminiscent of 80s arena rock, The Brave combined hard-hitting hooks with a big anthemic sound. Let me tell you, I'm an honest man, always had it all worked out. Their 1994 album, Trust, continued to display their ability to craft really awesome, faith-fueled hard rock music. Take me down where the sky is falling. Whitecross, Unveiled. Now we know what Whitecross is all about, man. By this point, they had several albums out. They were known for hooks, 80s metal, great guitar leads, and gritty vocals. And songs that just grabbed you and pulled you in and you wanted to sing with them. And this album's no exception to that, but definitely Unveiled. They got a little bit more, I don't know if poppy is the right word, or bluesy or acoustic-y. I don't know. There's a little bit of a lighter kind of middle of the road rock kind of vibe to this album. It definitely drives, and there's some hard hitters on here. And this isn't like a review thing. I'm just saying this album was a little bit of a stretch for them trying some new things. As I listened to it to refresh my ears and what it sounded like in preparation for this, what I remembered was that Rex actually has a music degree, and it kind of is on display here. There's some songs that have some really kind of technical guitar parts on them. And I'm not just talking about shredding. I mean, obviously Rex is an incredibly masterful, skillful guitar player, but even the song construction. If you're a metal guy, you just like, just that groove and that riff and that just, repeating chorus and that kind of a thing. But Rex took some time constructing some of these songs. And I mean, it's really cool. It's slightly off the beaten path of what I tend to think of default when I think of Whitecross, but it's really good music, man. Check it out. And now we come to our honorable mentions. And as I mentioned at the top, we've got 8 honorable mentions for you now. I'm stoked. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm just going to throw up the album cover and play a clip from each of the albums so that you can get a taste. Maybe this will be your first introduction to some of these and you'll be able to see who the artist is and check them out and go deeper with them if you want to. Or you'll be reminded, oh yeah, I forgot about that album from 1994. Either way, I hope you really enjoy these. Check them out. Keep your eyes on Jesus, friends.